Today I'll be going over our new online tax packet. This video will cover the first portion of it, which is in regards to general information. The first section you'll see it when you open it up. The very first question that's going to come up is going to ask which tax year you're filling out this tax packet for. Is automatically going to default to the value to the tax year we're preparing that year. But if we are preparing any previous year tax returns, you're going to want to put that year in there so we know which year you're wanting us to prepare. The next section is we're asking for your general personal information that we need for your tax return. Your name as it's shown on your social security number or on your social security card, your date of birth, phone number, email, what your social security number is, your address, and if you're receiving your a tax refund in the form of a check, this is the address it's going to go to. So you want to be sure that the address that's on here is an address that you can receive mail at. We're also going to need you to attach your driver's license, as we'll need that to be able to e-file. So you should just be able to click here and upload anywhere from your computer. Just pick any file. Obviously, if it's not the file we're looking for, we're going to reach back out to you and ask you to actually upload the right file, because without that, we won't be able to file your tax return. The bottom section of this is regarding your marital status and if whether you have children. If you are married for that tax year, we're going to assume that you are filing as married, filing jointly, unless you specify as otherwise in the additional comments section at the end of this survey. But if you are married, we're going to ask for your spouse's information, phone number, email, social security number, things like that that should be shown as it's shown on her or his social security card. Same with the driver's license. We'll need that as well. And then if you guys do have any children in 2020 or whatever tax year we're preparing taxes for, we're going to ask for the child's information. If you had dependent care, so if they had daycare, child care, and wanted to take that deduction, you can fill that information in, where the care happened, the social security number of the person who provided the care, or the business EIN. And then you'll be able to add multiple daycare providers if you had more than one for one child. And then you'll be able to add additional children if you have more than one child. And you should be able to do up to 6 children. If you have more than 6 children that you're wanting to claim on your taxes, just email us at taxes@COS Accounting, and we can discuss that and send a new form out that will allow you to put all your children's information on it. But this is what is in the first section of our online tax packet. If at any time you need to close out to be able to find additional information, but would like to save what you've already filled out, at the very bottom there's a save button, which allows you to email a link to yourself to return to the same form you were filling out. In this section, we'll be covering employment tax documents, which is the second page of the online tax packet. On here is only 4 questions regarding tax forms you would have received from your employer or any person you did contracting work for. So if you received a 1099 NEC, whether that be from the door-to-door business you sold for, or if you did any contracting work for anyone where they issued you a 1099-C, it was known as a 1099 MISC in the past. You'll attach that document here. If you had any W-2s or if your spouse had any W-2s, you'll attach all the W-2s here. If you received any unemployment or if you received a state tax refund, they'll issue you a 1099-G, and this is where you'll attach that. And then if you received any Social Security benefits, where you receive a SSA 1099, this is where you'll attach that. This section covers insurance, dependency, direct deposit information. So the very first question that's going to address is whether you're claimed as dependent on your parents' tax returns or not. Most married couples will not be claimed by their parents, but there are some rare cases where that does happen. But when you are claimed by your parents, it does severely worsen your tax outcome. So we don't even ask this question if you're over 24, because you can't be claimed unless you're 24 years or younger. But if you are 24 years or younger, you're going to need to ask your parents if they will be claiming you as dependent on their tax return that tax year. And then same with your spouse. You'll need to answer that question if you're married. next question, if you were living outside the United States for more than 6 months, you'll need to put yes or no. If you're due a refund and you want to receive it through direct deposit, this is where you'll put your banking information in. And just know that any information you put on this form, such as your social and the files you attach, all of it will be encrypted. The last section on this portion of the tax packet is your insurance information. If you had insurance coverage, it will ask if you're covered through the marketplace, which is Obamacare, in which case your insurance provider would have issued you a 1095A. If you're issued a 1095B or C, you'll not need to worry about this section. This is more for 1095A, and if you're covered through the marketplace. If you had any non-premium copay out-of-pocket medical expenses, this is where you can put that dollar amount. And then if you had health insurance that was not covered by a W-2 employer, you can put how much your health insurance premiums were. And the last question is, if you would like to receive a free quote on home and auto or a life insurance plan, we have a partner. His name is Jason. He can reach out to you about getting a free quote for that. In this next section, we're going to talk about school information. So whether you were in school, whether your spouse was in school, or whether one of your dependent children were in school, you can claim the American Opportunity Tax Credit as long as you qualify. So if you were in school, you would obviously click yes, and then it'll ask you about your information. If you're at least a half-time student, if you had a scholarship, how much your scholarship was, how much you spent on books, fees, and supplies. And then if you've been in school for more than 4 years, then you're going to have to figure out how many times you've taken the credit, because one of the qualifications is you have to take it 4 times or less. So if you've taken it over 4 times, then we won't be able to take the credit. Otherwise, it's an immediate audit on with the IRS, because they obviously keeping count. If you're not sure how many times you've taken it and you've been in school for over 4 years, you'll need to ask your parents to see if they've claimed it on your tax return or on their taxes previously. And then you can look at your old tax returns and look for Form 8863. And if you find it on there, then you've taken it for that year. So that will count as one use. And then we'll need you to attach your 1098-T, which is a tax document you get from whatever trade school or a college you attend, which will state how much was paid in tuition and how much was given in scholarship and Pell Grants. And then if your spouse is in school, you'll fill out the same information for your spouse. Same with any dependent children. And if you have more than one dependent children in college that you would like to claim the credit for, you can email taxes@COS Accounting, and we'll send you an additional form for any additional children you may have. And the last question is in regards to student loan payments and whatever tax year we are preparing, in which case you'd be issued a 1098-E document showing how much was paid in interest, and then you'll attach that document here. This next section of the tax packet is in regards to investments in retirement accounts. Very first question is asked if you did any stock trading that would result in a 1099-B, which would be issued by Robinhood, Acorns, TD Ameritrade, whoever your broker was, they'll issue you that 1099-B. And then this is where you'll attach it. And then we'll need to know if you traded any virtual currency. If you had any interest income in that tax year, this is where you'll attach a 1099 int for that interest income. If you contributed to an HSA or a health savings account, we'll need to know how much you contributed in that tax year. If you contributed into a retirement account, such as a Roth IRA, traditional solo 401k, or a SEP IRA, you're able to choose who it's for, whether that be for you or your spouse, and then how much you contributed, and then any tax documents for that transaction. And then if you had multiple contributions to retirement accounts, you're able to put additional entries in for that. And then if you took any distributions out of a retirement account, your retirement account, whether that be with Fidelity or whoever it is, they'll issue you a 1099-R, and this is where you're going to attach that document. And then if you had to roll over any retirement accounts into different types of retirement accounts where it resulted into a 1099-R, this is where you're going to attach that document as well. This section covers itemized deductions of the online tax packet, which really only covers two sections of the itemized deductions, which is charitable contributions to a church or nonprofit or donation of any goods. The rest of the things that go on itemized deductions we'll be able to pull from different parts of your tax packet. But if you did make any charitable contributions to a church or nonprofit organization, you're able to put whatever church or nonprofit you made the donation to, how much the donation was, and then if you donate to another nonprofit organization or church, then you're able to put multiple entries in. And then if you donated any goods to a church or nonprofit organization, whether that be Goodwill, Salvation Army, Desert Industries, you're able to put who you donated to, what the value of the donation was. In this section, we'll be covering the personal residence part of the online tax packet. So this is for only homeowners that, or those of you who owned a home during the tax year we are preparing, in which case you would put yes. If you did own rentals or owner occupied rentals during that tax year, we'll cover that in the next section. This is only for homes that you lived in, where you were the only person living in there. Um, if you had a mortgage, we're going to ask you to attach your 1098 mortgage interest statement, which is where you would get that from your mortgage lender. And then would ask you how much you paid in property tax. If you sold the home that tax year, to be able to calculate your capital gains, if you did have to pay capital gains, we'll need to know how much the purchase price of the home was when you bought it, when you moved into the home, and when you moved out, and what the closing docs will need you to attach for when you sold the home. And if you had more than one personal residence in that tax year, we'll ask you about that second residence as well. And then if you had a solar panel system installed on your roof during that tax year, we'll ask you how much the install was for the solar power system. Now, for those of you who did this in previous tax years where you still have solar credits available, we'll look at your previous year's tax returns and see which ones are still available to be carried forward, and we'll carry it forward for you. This section covers rental properties and their expenses and income. So for those of you who do not have a rental property, or you do not have an owner occupied property where you lived in the home and then rented out a portion of it to a roommate or something, you can just skip on to the next section. But for those of you who do have rentals or owner occupied investment properties, we'll ask for each property individually, and then you'll need to select what type of property it is. We'll need to put the address in. If you stayed in it personally, you or your spouse during that property, we'll need to ask what percent of it was owner occupied, how many days of it was rented out, and then how many days of it was used for personal use. We're also going to need to know the purchase date, the purchase price of the rental property. If you sold the property, kind of like in the previous video, we'll need to know the when it was sold and when it was, what the sales price was, to be able to calculate your capital gains. If you do have a if you have a mortgage with a rental property, then we'll ask you to include your mortgage interest statements for that property. We're going to ask you for the total income for that year. If you received any 1099s for the rents, we'll ask you to attach those 1099s. If you had to do any significant remodeling, we'll ask about each individual remodel you did. And then if you had to furnish the rental or rental property, then we'll ask when you purchased the property and then how much the total cost was for the furniture. And then the next section is all of the expenses for the rental. If you didn't have any expenses in that category, you can leave it blank. And then if you had additional rentals, it will ask the exact same questions, but for any additional rentals you may have. And you're able to input up to 6 rentals on our online tax packet. If you have more than that, then you can email taxes@COS Accounting, and we'll be able to issue you more, a sheet to be able to put in your additional rentals. In this section, we will be covering the business expenses. So for those of you who are a W-2 employee only, you and your spouse if you're married, then you can just click this box and you will not need to worry about this section, and you can continue on. But if you did receive a 1099 NEC or 1099 MISC document, or you have a business where you receive revenue, you can select what kind of an industry you have. We have a lot of door-to-door sales reps, so we have that option available. But if your industry is not door to door, then we have another section with expenses more tailored to your business. And so you'll just want to select which industry is more tailored to you. Um, the first question is moving forward if you want to keep your S Corp open or if you want to shut down your S Corp. If you do want to shut down your S Corp, you need to know that there is a file quarterly that needs to be filed. So there needs to be always a final return in a final quarter. So regardless of whether when you tell us this section, if you actually want to shut down your business, we'll need to do one more quarter after this to let the IRS know that that is your final quarter. If you had an address change with your business, you're going to want to put your new address. If you're moving across state lines, it's going to involve moving over a bunch of accounts and shutting and opening new businesses, new LLC accounts, and withholding and unemployment insurance accounts for payroll. So just know that if you are wanting to move over the state line, that we're going to have to set up a new LLC for you in that new state and then open all those withholding accounts, unemployment insurance accounts, and things like that. So we will be reaching out to you about that if you do want to move across state lines, but just be aware about that. And if you are just moving down the street or anywhere within the same state, that's not going to be an issue. You can put that new address here and we'll update it on your tax return. For those of you who don't receive any 1099 documents, you can put your total gross receipts or your revenue in this box here. If you have inventory, then you can put in your inventory in here. And then the rest of these are your expenses. And then we have sections explaining each expense. And these will be tailored to those of you who, if you're in general business, will have more things about merchant and transaction fees that applies to you. If it's door to door, there'll be more expenses that are more tailored to your industry. And anything that doesn't apply to you, you can just leave blank. You don't have to fill anything in. If you did have a vehicle that you use for business, we'll ask about that vehicle and its information. And if you ended up buying a vehicle, whether that be for a loan or cash, we'll ask about that, and then we'll figure out whether it would be better for you to take the depreciation deduction for that vehicle or to take the mileage deduction. And when we prepare your tax returns, we'll let you know what was done. And if you would want to change one of those, say you had multiple vehicles and you wanted to take depreciation on both vehicles instead of having mileage on one and depreciation on another, you can just let us know to do that and we can go back and update your returns and do that. In this section, we'll be covering the less common tax items portion of the online tax packet. And the first couple questions is asking about the stimulus checks that were issued out, whether you got it or not. And if you didn't get it, then we'll be able to show that on your tax return so that you do get it, if you do qualify. If you had a home buyer credit, and for those of you who used the first-time home buyer credit a couple years ago, then you'll be able to put that information here as well. If you're divorced and have to pay, or if you receive alimony payments from your former spouse, you'll put that information in here, including your spouse's social security number and the name and everything. If you have any K-1s for businesses that you're a part of that we aren't preparing the tax returns for, like if you have a partner who's in charge of preparing the business returns and he uses his own firm and he issues you a K-1, this is where you'll be able to attach that document. And then if you prepaid any taxes, so this is not your quarterly taxes that we send you, but if you prepaid for your personal federal taxes or your personal state taxes, then we'll ask for how much you prepaid for your federal tax and prepaid for state. And then we'll ask for an itemized list of the payments you made and then when you made each payment. And then this last section is to address any things that we weren't able to address in the tax packet, or if there's anything you need us to know about your business or about this tax year, you can attach those comments here and we'll be sure to have that done for you. And if there are any tax documents that you were not able to attach anywhere else, you can attach them here. In this last section is a survey asking you about your experience with our online tax packet. We know that this is the very first year we've done it, and we're wanting to make it better and an easier experience for you. So any input on your experience with our tax packet would be very helpful, and we can try to update that so that we can make this more efficient and easier for you guys to use moving forward.